Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. How's it going, guys? Put a hat on. How you guys doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. Welcome to the show, everybody. My computer's completely bogged down right now. It took me like 5 minutes to share things on the different social channels, but we are here, folks. We are live, coast to coast, around the globe. We have all sorts of people coming in across the globe. Introduce yourselves. Yep. Okay, cool. Yeah. Introduce yourselves. Where you're from. That's fun. Hello from Austin. Hey, Robbie. We got Bonnie. Hi, Canada, but currently in Toronto, Canada, but I'm American from the Seattle area. All right. Hello from the Netherlands. All right. Emmanuel Bradshaw from Los Angeles. Wow. Look at all these people. Cyprus, California, Netherlands. Wow. Hey, man, there's so many people watching. Irvine, California, 949 area code. Jacksonville. This is exciting. I don't think we've done that in a long time. That's fun. We got a lot of people watching here. Dozens of people are watching around the globe. But enough of that. Today we have a really interesting topic, folks. We're talking all about how to break into this industry, which is what people want to do. Before we get started, I just want to say at the top that we know that the industry is going through a tough time right now. So, which is why we started this show to begin with. We knew that there was a lot of internships got canceled. We know there's been a lot of layoffs in the industry. We're all aware of that. So everything that we talk about on this show is always about long-term growth. We talk about learning more about the industry. We've talked about diversity and inclusion, which is, of course, a very, very, very long-term thing that's going to take a lot of work. And my story itself, it's taken me almost a decade. Well, actually, it's been more like 20 years of being in the industry to get to where I want to be today. So it is all about long-term strategy. So for those of you that are watching that want to break into the industry, whether you're students, whether you're in an adjacent industry, this show is all for you. But it's a long-term game, right, Dave?
Absolutely. Yeah. My name's Dave. I'm currently a BIM coordinator at Scenario, and that in itself has been a pivot for me, and a way for me to use some of my previous skills. I mean, my degree was in mechanical engineering, and I learned Revit in one of my first jobs, which helped me get a role in the industry. So this is a very good topic close to my heart, and I'm excited to be able to talk about it.
All right. So here's what we're going to do today. So we're starting something new where we're going to be bringing on, instead of just watching the three of us talk to all these people, which we've been doing, which is great. We're several months in here, and we're wanting to amplify other voices. And so what we're going to be doing every single week or every other week, whenever we do the show, we're going to be highlighting another voice and somebody, usually a student or a recent graduate who's trying to break into the industry. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and welcome our guest, Andrea. How are you doing today?
Hi, I'm fine. Thank you. How are you guys?
Oh, good. So good. So we'd love to, before we bring Joe Fox on, why don't you take a couple minutes to talk about who you are, okay?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for having me as a co-host. I really like this project because I really fit into the targeted audiences since I'm recently graduated from communications in the entertainment industry. First, a little bit about myself. I'm originally from Mexico, but I grew up in the Netherlands, where I'm currently at right now. And my own passion is creating storytellings for in and around products, companies, but also for surroundings. And now I'm focusing on how I can get experience here in Europe for the entertainment industry, and who knows, I can also grow into the United States area. And how I have had some great experiences with the teen entertainment industry, especially with the TEA, but also with IAPA. I've been to expositions and the networking events, and they were all great. You guys are all amazing. And I have also had an experience to go to the Disney College program, where I was a character attendant, and especially in Animal Kingdom, where I learned all the possibilities of storytelling, even in the smallest details, can really change a whole experience for a person or a whole group, and that's what I really love about it. So that's what I'm focusing on right now.
That's great. That's great. Well, welcome to the show. So we actually met because you came to us. So you were about to graduate Mixer event, right? We had a little bit of a web or a Zoom call, and we were matched up at the very end. So for those of you that weren't there, what we did is we kept going down into smaller groups. So we had a big, large group. We were like in the groups of 8. Then we went down to like 4. Then we were down in groups of 2. And at the end of the very end of it, we said we wanted to have everyone make a commitment on how you can help each other. And you said, "Hey, I'll come on your show." And here you are, which is really cool.
Yes, it's great.
So I want to say something really cool that I'm observing. So I'm tracking the numbers here, and I can tell who's watching on Facebook and who's watching on YouTube. And our numbers on YouTube are like 5 times higher than they are on Facebook, which means we're having a great outreach, and we're having people that normally don't watch the show, who are just our Facebook friends and Facebook acquaintances and all that watch, which I think is really cool. So I just want to say that. But without further ado, we're going to bring you back on a little bit later to do your own segment and talk to Joe Fox. I'm going to go ahead and bring on Joe Fox. So Joe Fox, I don't want to give him too much of an introduction, but he stormed onto the Themed Entertainment Association TEA scene like lightning in a bottle, and just everyone knew who Joe Fox was. He was the guy he was like the technical director for everything. And so our paths have crossed on several occasions because we're both big theme park fans. And he's always been willing to help out other people. So without further ado, I'm going to bring on Joe Fox. Hey, man.
Well, hello.
And,
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you for coming on the show. I know you love to help out the next generation. You love to share your information. So why don't just to start off, can you talk about what your background is and your story, where you started, where you grew up, take as long as you want, and then we'll dive a little bit deeper into the questioning.
That sounds great. Yeah. Thank you for having me again. So my name's Joe. My background, I started out as a theme park guy that never got to visit theme parks. My parents never actually took us. So my first trip to a theme park was as a high school marching band student in '97, visiting Epcot. And my very first theme park experience was experiencing Spaceship Earth and looking up at it going, all right, anything that involves that, I need to be a part of. Like Andrea, I became a college program student at Disney, and that eventually led to not finding the job that I wanted. So I left the industry, spent 10 years in education, came back into themed entertainment, which we're going to talk about shortly. I worked for Burkett Engineering for 5 years. That was a wonderful experience. They're wonderful people. Did a little stint at EXP, and now I'm a solution architect at Alcoy McBride. So
what did you do? So presume that nobody has any idea of what kind of your role was when you were working at these companies, because I don't. So when you went to Burkett Engineering, that was your first job. What was the type of role that you actually did?
So my first role was project engineer. So my job was to jump into every one of the projects that we took on. The projects were varied across every imaginable themed entertainment project. Some of them were very much on the theme side, where I was getting to work on parades and floats. And then there was a project that I got to work on a life safety system for animal care at a theme park. And that was obviously a very different experience. Burkett Engineering has a tendency to work on projects that involve safety systems, where your job is to make sure that whatever creature you're taking care of survives the experience. And that's a very serious thing. We have to take that very seriously and work very cautiously on that kind of stuff. And so that, for me, coming from an education background, from a programming background, was very different. And so, working with those consummate professionals was a really good experience and a good introduction to that. So our job was to make sure that the water was the right temperature, that it had the right amount of oxygen in it, that it had the right amount of ozone in it to take care of cleaning the water, and talk about a completely different experience. You come into the themed entertainment industry, you're thinking, I'm going to work on roller coasters, I'm going to work on dark rides. No, today I'm going to work on something completely different. And I think that's one thing that a lot of people who come into this industry don't realize is there's so much to do. There's so much variety. When Imagineering talks about their roles, they're the first ones to say we have hundreds of different jobs inside Imagineering. And no, it's not just mechanical engineers. It's not just electrical engineers. Burkett Engineering is primarily an electrical engineering company, but I'm not an electrical engineer. My background is in software and computer programming, managing teams of programmers, but I actually I'm not an electrical engineer by training. Now I can do a lot of that kind of work, but because of those wonderful folks, but that's not what my training or background is. So after that, for a couple of years, spent as a project engineer. They ended up promoting me to managing the Florida group. So I managed a whole team of engineers. And talk about a fantastic group. Again, we had people working on pyrotechnic systems. We had people working on parade floats. We designed a bunch of new lighting control systems. And again, worked on projects for Disney, Universal, SeaWorld, and tons of other companies. I got to travel to Macau. I worked on a project over in a casino there called the Galaxy. Anyone who's ever been to Galaxy Macau, they have this wonderful little diamond show. If you haven't seen it, go find a YouTube video. Very Vegas, very glitzy, glamorous. We make a diamond appear magically in the air, and poof, there's all kinds of lasers and lights and music, and then poof, it disappears. So lots of magic. So that's one of my favorite projects that I actually get to talk about. So
cool. And then how about some of your most recent role, the most recent role you're in right now?
So yeah, the transition to Alcorn is kind of an interesting story. When I very first wanted to get into the industry, Steve Alcorn has an Imagineering class that he teaches. And so Steve was one of the very first people I met in this industry. And getting to know the industry through him, through the lens of that course, was very helpful. And he actually helped introduce me to the Burkett folks. And so for it to come full circle and for me to be back at Alcorn has been a real wonderful experience. So my job now as a solution architect is to basically help people figure out how to solve their problems. They come to us and say, here, I've got this crazy idea. How do I do it? What of your products can I use to do it? Sometimes the answer is, I have a product for that. Sometimes the answer is, not us. Go call this guy or go call this company. I get to redirect them to folks like Burkett Engineering and to other companies out there in the industry. So solution architecting is really all about knowing what tools we can use, what tools are not the right tools for a situation, and helping people find solutions to their problems.
That's great. Cool. Well, thank you for laying the groundwork. I'm going to throw things over to Dave, who's going to go right into those details. Bye, guys, for now.
So one of the focuses of this webinar we'd like to have, and one of the very interesting parts about your story specifically, is your transition from kind of an outside industry into our industry. I mean, I think a lot of people, especially during this time, are going to have to go out and find roles in other industries in the meantime while ours recovers. What were some of the things that you were able to do to make yourself more marketable to places like Burkett, and what kind of skills were you focused on building before you entered the industry to get here?
Excellent question. So yeah, like I said, I spent 10 years working in education before coming into this. I was a project manager, software developer, leading development teams. And so all those skills were really useful, but coming to TEA, I had no idea what can I offer. You know, I want to be an Imagineer. That was the dream. You know, my license plate on my car was Imagineer for the longest time. So how do I do that? And so I started doing the research and started reading up about those, you know, hundreds of job descriptions and taking the Steve Alcorn Imagineering class. And he said, join TEA, volunteer. Okay, that's a really cool start. So I volunteered. My very first TEA assignment was to assemble IKEA furniture. That was all they would let me do for the first thing. And that led to meeting people as a student and saying, hey, I'm brand new to this industry. Tell me what you know, learning about people. And one of the very first people I met was Steve Burkett. And anyone who's ever met Steve can tell you that he tells great stories. He has a lot of really great advice to share. One of the first things he told me was, I don't think we could hire anyone like you, but it's worth a conversation. So we sat down, and he ended up sitting me down with his brother, Glenn, who owns Burkett Engineering. And we had this really great conversation about, I don't know what we would do with you because you don't fit the mold. You're not an electrical engineer. You're not an engineering manager. You don't know anything about lighting. You don't know anything about these types of systems. But then we sat down and looked at my resume a little bit more closely. And we said, well, he has project management experience. He has a PMP certification. He has experience in managing ERP systems because everybody has to do finance and payroll and all of those types of things. Mm-hmm. And as it turned out, they had little needs all throughout their company that said there were holes, there were little gaps inside the company. And so as we looked at it, There was 10% of a job here and 25% of a job there. And I said, okay, there might be a fit here. We can take those transferable skills, those things that are useful anywhere, and build a role around that. Now, not every company is going to do that. If you walk into some of the larger companies, they're not going to generally custom build a role for you. But the great thing about these small companies is that they frequently need people to wear as many hats as possible, and that's exactly what I did. So my first job, the title was project engineer, but I also ended up writing software in the background that moved data from our project management system to the finance system, and automated all of those processes, which ended up saving us a lot of time and money. And so finding ways that you can use little skills that you have, even hobbies that you have, and turning those into things that help the company be successful are ways that really help make your story more sellable to the company that's hiring you.
So what would you recommend for people who are finding other roles in other industries but hoping to one day come to themed entertainment? How would you recommend them market those skills?
Well, I think the first thing is you have to know what your target is, right? So you're going to come into you're going to want to come into this industry. You need to know what role you're going to be wanting to come into, so that you do the research, you learn about it, find out what skills exist for that, and then try to build up as many of those while you're in those other roles as you can. So if you want to be a show control guy like I am, for instance, you can take the Imagineering course online. You can take the free training that we offer at Alcorn McBride. You can take the trainings that folks like Medialon and Gilderfluke offer. You can buy those little components and build things on the side. One of my former employees from Burkett Engineering has a really great stream on LinkedIn where he's building whole little attractions in his free time and automating them with things like Raspberry Pis and other toys. And that's fantastic because companies see that and they go, I want to hire that guy. And it's not because they have any idea what's on his resume, but they see that he's got all the skills it takes to put together an entire attraction, to automate it, to put music to it, to show control it. Of course, that's the person they want to hire, right? So he's using skills that he learned in school that were hobbies of his, that were just passion projects, and he's going to parlay that into a really, really good career. I think one other thing that I was going to say was it's really important to also put yourself in the role of the person who's going to hire you. When you're writing a resume, you're always thinking, I'm thinking about me, I want this job. Don't think about it like that. Think about it from the person who's going to hire you. Why should they hire you? If you think about it that way, how can I benefit the company? How can I help them be successful? You're going to give them all the reasons that they want to hire you. And of course, it's going to make it a lot easier for them to say yes.
Definitely. And I know personally, I've used LinkedIn and the TEA a lot to reach out to people in the industry to learn more about the things that they're looking for. And I've definitely, been successful trying to. I'm sorry, man. But I'd like for you to speak on. Oh my God, sorry. Talk about the TEA while I get a drink.
Absolutely. Yeah, the TEA is a great path to finding out more about the industry and finding out more about the jobs that you want to have. When I came to the industry, I had no idea what job I wanted to have. I knew from the Imagineering class a few of the jobs that existed. Steve's book talks about these broad swaths of roles, but there are hundreds of job titles and hundreds of roles within this, even just the individual company like Imagineering or Universal Creative. And learning what those roles mean and how you apply that, you can go into the TEA and start having conversations with people. What do you do? Tell me about yourself. Tell me about your company. What do you do? And then you're going to find the niche, right? You're going to find the thing that you're like, tell me more. And as you just want to actively consume every bit of knowledge you can about that. When you find that's the thing. Chase that.
Yeah. Definitely, I think it's very difficult to kind of see behind the curtain in our industry, and one of the best ways to actually learn about all of the different roles that are out there is just talk to people who do it. Yeah. I mean, the way I pivoted with Revit and BIM skills, I didn't even know it was a need in the industry until I started talking to people, and now I realized, it's huge.
Most of our companies didn't know 5 years ago that was going to be a need either. And so they weren't writing that into job descriptions. They weren't telling the industry or the colleges that was needed. So as they're starting to turn into things like BIM and starting to realize that, hey, we should probably visualize this whole thing before we build it, that is becoming incredibly valuable. And I love seeing it.
Yeah, I mean, but it's just about finding out what's out there and then figuring out how you can use your current skills to get there. And the best way to do that is just to talk to people and learn.
Absolutely.
And one of the best ways is to connect people through
right? I mean, when you find someone who's truly passionate about their work, when they live their story, people who just, that they were meant to do that work, listening to them talk about that, it helps you ignite and try to find your passion.
Mm-hmm. And I know one of the best ways that I've found to connect with people so far has been in the TEA. And I'd love for you to speak about, because I know you're very involved in the TEA. I'd love to hear kind of your involvement and your experience and then kind of the roles that you've gotten.
Yeah. So like I said, my very first TEA volunteer experience was building IKEA furniture for IAPA. I had sent an email to David Ion and said, I want to volunteer. They said, cool, let's do that. So Kathy, who was the event producer at the time, said, IAPA's in like 2 weeks. We've already filled all the other positions, but sure, I guess you can build IKEA furniture for us. Neat. One of the things is always be willing to say yes. Saying yes to that little thing has led to every good thing that's happened to me since then. So admittedly, that first one was a little bit of grunt work. Doesn't matter. I turned the screwdriver, I got the work done, I did a good job, and I showed up again. So the next time was for Summit and Gala the next year, and I got to volunteer helping to actually run the technology. So there was this wonderful gentleman from Electrosonic named Gary who was running the technology at the time, and Gary needed a volunteer helper. So my job was to do whatever Gary needed. And so I showed up, and I'm like, Gary, what do you need? Go get me a Diet Coke. Cool, I'm on it. So initially it was very light, but eventually it got to the point where I took over that role from Gary. He ended up going on to doing other things. And so then I started running the technology for every one of TEA's tentpole events. So Summit, Gala, SATE, and IAPA every year. So putting together the technology, making sure that all the content comes together, that it's all going to write and show up on the screen, coordinating the donations from our dear friends at Christie and a bunch of other folks who donate equipment to make sure that that show goes together every year, which, by the way, is really one of the best perks of the job. I get to play with really, really expensive hardware. They give us, multiple millions of dollars worth of projectors and screens every year to play with at each of these shows. That's really fun. And it's kind of a nice way to preview what's coming next for the industry. So the projectors that we get to use are often the ones they're getting ready to introduce and put into attractions. So that's really kind of fun. And so building that out and being part of the content team to help figure out what's coming next for TEA was a real joy. And that truly has led to every one of the really fun experiences, like meeting C3PO and getting to hang out with him for 3 days in Pittsburgh. So fun little anecdote. He and I were hanging out backstage, and I didn't have a way to get back to the hotel. We ended up staying a little past the last shuttle. And so Anthony Daniels actually drove me back to my hotel in Pittsburgh. And so I had to give him turn-by-turn directions on how to get back there because he, didn't know that area all that well. At the time, the Star Wars movie was just getting ready to come out. And so on my phone on Waze was C3PO giving directions to me. And I got to have a really meta experience of turning that around and giving directions to C3PO.
That's awesome.
So I wanted to jump in here because I don't know if you know this, Joe, but I had a very similar background to you, where my first thing in the industry was volunteering for the TEA, the Theo Awards, and with David Ion. And it was like 2009 or 10, and it was at the Globe Theater in Universal, and I was doing the same exact thing. I was a creative coordinator. We had a big black box, so it wasn't at the Disneyland Hotel, so we had to fabricate all these things, and it was like I was doing anything and everything. I was room sweeping. I was willing to do whatever it took to get the job done. But I also was the person that was wrangling the speakers. So that year we had Marty Sklar was a speaker. We had one of the Sherman brothers was there.
Yep.
I was on a shoot where we filmed. Oh gosh, this is horrible. I can't remember his name. Buzz Price.
Oh yeah.
Actually, we filmed like him talking about things, which was fantastic. And so. Just wanted to chime in. Back to your scheduled programming. TEA is great, though.
We had
I think this is a. Go ahead.
We had a recipient for one of the awards a couple of years ago and he ended up getting a little secret video that there were 3 people who knew about this video before it went up on the screen. And it turned out that we were receiving a little video from Cher. So Cher sent us an email about this award recipient, and I got to receive this email and see it and go, whoa, completely starstruck, right? Like, this is a really fun moment that I am one of 3 people in the world who knows this video exists. And that's the kind of thing that volunteering and being a part of this industry leads to.
That's awesome.
The video of Steven Spielberg talking about the TEA, and that, being in that moment and being there for that shoot must have been a blast. So,
right.
Wow. So I think this is a good opportunity to throw it to Andrea for a few questions about your outlook and how you see the industry coming about in the next few months. But before I do, want real quick, if any of our viewers have questions for Joe, feel free to throw them up on the comments section, and we'll get to them. All right. So Andrea, take it away.
Thank you. Unfortunately, right now we are in a little bit of an epidemic and with the crisis, and of course, first and foremost, it's the most important that we are healthy. But how do you think that the our industry, will be in the next 3 to 6 months?
So I'm internally an optimist. I see that there are certainly a lot of challenges ahead. I did get to go experience the parks earlier this week. I went to Disney, to Magic Kingdom. It was honestly one of the best park days I've had in 10 years because, 1, there were very few people in the park, but 2, everyone was just super polite and super friendly. The cast members had obviously been very much looking forward to reopening. I was there on the very first day that they were allowing guests in. It was a cast preview day. And watching how diligent they were about making sure everyone was safe, it filled me with a lot of hope. So that was a really good start. I also see that a lot of the projects that have been coming down the pipe have not been canceled, which is also really good news. There have been a lot of, we're going to have to push this off a couple of months or a year. But so far, I haven't seen anything where there's just been a huge overt cancellation. There are a number of areas that have been harder hit, particularly live entertainment. Our friends at Feld, they were getting ready to do a tour with the Jurassic World live show, and what a fantastic show that was. We did a TEA event for that. And I hate to see that show not running because it's fantastic and everybody in the world should get to see it. So I hope that they get to turn it back on real soon. On the other hand, I think that the United States is going to take a little while to get over this because we need to do a little bit better job about taking care of each other. In the meantime, the rest of the world is doing a good job. Japan and China are both back up to working. Both of them have their parks open. The construction projects are continuing. Both of them have really big, exciting things opening in the next 6 months. Many of them have a lot of really interesting things on the roadmap for the next 18 to 24 months. And so there is going to be a lot of work. One of the things that may require is for people to be flexible about where they're going to work. Your internship may be with Disney or Universal Creative in Orlando or Florida or in California, but you may actually be working on projects that are in China or Japan or elsewhere. There's a lot of other stuff being built in South America too. So I think in the next 3 to 6 months, there's going to be plenty of work. It's just not going to be necessarily work here. So that's probably a good way to talk about it.
Yeah, luckily here in the where I'm at in the Netherlands, is there also the parks are up and running again, and even pushing their maximum amount of people that are allowed to enter. So it's of course a little bit different, but luckily they are open, and that is a good sign, like you said. Yes.
Yeah.
So, and since it's like a crisis, did you notice, or do you think, what are the biggest differences between the Great Recession and now the COVID-19?
I think one of the biggest problems with the Great Recession was that it was self-inflicted. We created this bubble that was completely unsustainable of hype and nothing of sustenance, of substance. And so that was a self-inflicted wound. This is one where nature just said, hey, here's something you're going to have to deal with. And it sucks. There's nothing more we can say about that part of it. But we are humans. And one of the great things that humans do is overcome things. And we've overcome everything that nature's thrown at us before, and we will overcome this one. It's rough, and I don't want to minimize that at all. A lot of people have had really bad experiences. A lot of family members have been lost, and that's heartbreaking. Several of my dear friends have lost family to this, and it tears me up thinking about that. But we will overcome this. We will get past this. And the most important thing is that we work on that together so that we come out of it stronger.
Exactly, and that's what inspired also this program. So that's already what we're doing. So thank you. And so with the positive view for the future, when do you think that owners and vendors of companies will start hiring again for also like normal jobs, but also internships or mentorships?
That's a good question. I see some companies starting to hire now. LinkedIn has had job postings. I actually got a message yesterday from a friend looking for a particular type of talent. So I've reached out into the network to try and help with that. I think it's probably going to be 3 to 6 months before they start really earnestly hiring to fill roles, particularly the companies that have done layoffs. With Universal Creative just shedding a bunch of jobs, it's probably going to be a little while before they're allowed to hire again. Disney doing furloughs and having not done many layoffs yet. I think it'll be interesting to see as the parks reopen how that's going to turn out. I am, like I said, I'm an optimist, so I believe very good things. I think they will continue to be successful with that. For other companies, the smaller companies that are able to pivot and find work wherever it is, I think they will start hiring sooner. The company that was looking yesterday, for instance, is doing a lot of work all over the world, and they're also diversifying industries. So they're doing work not just in themed entertainment, but in parallel industries like hospitality and recreation and hospitals, for instance. So lots of that kind of work to be done. There are sectors of the industry that are doing really well at the moment. There are obviously sectors that are hurting. So companies that can diversify and still want to bring the themed experience to it are going to help keep the lights on for the next little while. So keep an eye open for that. Keep an eye on the Themed Entertainment Jobs website. Thank you, Dave. And you know, if you reach out and talk to people and say, hey, this is what I'm looking for. Yesterday, I went and did a search on LinkedIn and Facebook to say who's looking for these jobs, and I couldn't find anyone. So I reach out and say, hey, this is the kind of job that I'm looking for. Here's how much experience I have, and you know, we'll help you get connected to the right people.
Okay, so also you're thinking that more location-based entertainment will grow more beyond the only themed parks and restaurants, but in other sectors.
Yeah. Location-based entertainment is reaching out into new disciplines every day. Retail is getting a lot more immersive and more experiential. Apple kind of started with some of that, making their stores an experience. Microsoft tried to follow that and didn't do quite as well. But people are wanting to go to a store to have an experience because they can buy everything they want online. You can get anything you want on Amazon, and this COVID thing has taught us we don't actually have to leave the house very often if we don't want to. So if you want me to leave the house, you better give me a damn good reason to. And that means your experience, special. Your shopping experience has to be worth it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's what also is the interesting part of it, like the design and the story of telling of how to create everything a little bit more special. So you're also better, like intriguing for other companies.
Absolutely. Well, and as you're working in other industries, you might be working at a place like a Microsoft store, and it could be your job to take the things that you're passionate about from themed entertainment and help them make their stores better. And as you do that, you become an experience designer. And then when it's time for the themed entertainment industry to hire another experience designer, you can say, hey, I made the Microsoft stores suck less. So that's a way that you can parlay that into other things. Seeing a question on the screen there. What sectors are doing very good during this time? Healthcare. The healthcare industry is making a lot of money, but they're also investing in hospitals. Construction, surprisingly, is doing really well because there's a lot of stuff to be built while we're waiting. Surprisingly, even things like road construction are out there, building while everybody's, sitting at home, because they can get a lot more accomplished while we're not tying up the roads and not tying up the streets. So malls, surprisingly, are trying to figure out what's coming next for them. They're trying to make themselves more experience-based. So they're investing. Simon Mall's stock has gone up considerably, even though a lot of their tenants are leaving. So there's a lot to be said. There's a lot of positive to look for. One article I'm going to post somewhere in the comments here shortly is everybody thinks that the world is getting worse, that the world is getting darker. It turns out that's actually not true. And there are several hundred metrics that you can look at that show the world's getting better, even with these dark moments. And look for the positive, you will find it.
That's amazing. Thank you very much. Well, I'll pass it on to Kelly.
Hey, how are you? We had so many good questions coming in right now. And you're just a fantastic person to answer these. So Samuel has, is it better to fine-tune skills related to what you want to do, or related to your background, or diversify your skills even if they're unrelated to your background, but not be an expert?
That's a tough one to answer. It depends on what you want to do. I generally say, and I've had a person at Imagineering slap my wrist for saying this, but I'm going to just keep saying it, that if you want to work for Imagineering or Creative or one of the large companies, you need to be really, really, really good at something, because they get 1,000 resumes for every job that they put out there. If yours isn't one to stick out, if you aren't known for something, you're probably not going to make it to the top of that pile. The other thing is, if you're applying through the front door for some of those jobs, you're probably also not going to make it to the top of the pile. If they don't already know your name, if they're not looking for you, they're probably not going to find you, because the application systems that you put your resume into look for keywords, they look for reasons to throw your resume away. And if you don't have the exact amount of education experience, if your formatting is too weird, if it can't understand what your resume is trying to get across, if you spend more time on the graphic portion of your resume than you do on the content, etc., they're just going to find reasons to throw your resume away, which sucks, but it is the reality. So if you want to work for one of the big companies, you have to differentiate yourself to the point where you are the person, you are the expert on that topic. That doesn't mean you shouldn't have other experiences, and that doesn't mean you shouldn't have other hobbies and other things you're passionate about, but and have a good story to tell, but you need to be the best. On the other side of that, if you are going to work for a small company like I did, and like I continue to do, having additional diverse skill sets that help them, keep the lights on and do weird things like, connect the finance system with the project management system, those are things that they need, and somebody's got to do it, because otherwise they have to hire it out. So having those little background skills can be very useful too.
So this one just came in. How do you prevent from being overqualified for a job opportunity?
This one's tough. We actually had a conversation on this yesterday, where a person with 20 years of experience applied for a job where they only needed 4 to 6 years of experience, and the problem with that is you tend to be more expensive than they're able to afford at that point. I guess the challenge is, if you're overqualified for that job, you can be very explicit in your story, in your cover letter, and say, yes, I have 20 years of experience, but I know what you're hiring for, and I intend that this is the job that I've been looking for, and I realize that I will need to start at this level and work my way up. You have to tell a story. So if you have 20 years of experience, or 20 years of experience in some related industry that you're trying to parlay into being a new job here, you just have to weave the words, meet the person who's doing the hiring, and make them feel like you're still the right person for the role. I can't hear Kelly.
I totally just did that thing. I'm so sorry. Oh my gosh.
No worries.
Melody is like the queen of amazing questions and information. She's like a genius. I love her. Love you, Melody. So she asked, what is the best way an engineer or technical person can showcase their work experience to potential employers?
That's a really good question. And also, I love you, Melody. You're great. Melody does so much for this industry and has such a great heart for it. So thank you for all that you do. So this question is tough. Like I said, one of the guys that I hired at Burkett Engineering, his way of showing off his skills was to build side projects. And that was a really useful thing because not only does he have the project that he can take in and show you, he's got the video for showing all the construction progress. He can show you all of the code. He can show you all of the models and all the ways that things failed and what he learned from those failures, because that's a really important skill, and have all of that to show. One of the biggest problems with our industry is that we don't have a way for us to talk about the work that we worked on because every single project has an NDA of some kind, it seems. And so we can't tell you, hey, I worked on this project and I did this part of the design. We have to be very vague. And so having little side projects or other things that you work on can be very helpful. It's also really helpful if you can do that with other people. So joining clubs, joining maker spaces, and participating with them, volunteering for organizations. I can tell you that my volunteer experience with TEA has been a big part of every conversation I've had about jobs when I've been applying, saying, yes, I volunteer, I was on the board. I spend a lot of time doing this for two reasons. One, I'm going to continue doing that, so I need their commitment to say yes, that they're okay with me spending my work time doing that. And two, that me giving back to this community is something of value, and they also find value in that. So using those skills and putting them into something like an organization is another good way to showcase that work.
And we kind of had like a little discussion going off screen, but Patrick asked a question. How do you do the research to find out more about the roles that you don't know exist? Like, how does one do that?
That's tough. Obviously, going to networking events and talking to people is a really good way to start. Hopefully you have at least a general idea. So if you're a mechanical engineer and you know that you want to work on something that isn't designing roller coasters, because that's what 60% of mechanical engineers seem to want to do. But if you're the one that wants to work on animatronics, but you don't know exactly how to parlay that into something, then you at least know who you need to talk to get that information. So if you, again, if animatronics is an example, you would say, okay, well, I know I need to talk to Chuck Fawcett, or I need to talk to Garner Holt, or I need to talk to someone in one of those companies and get more information about what kind of roles there are, because there's a ton. You look at Chuck's organization, he has 100 or so employees, maybe more. And again, every one of those is a very different role. He's got a bunch of people who do costumes and fabrics, but every one of them has a specialty inside that. So every one of his mechanical engineers, his electrical engineers, his programmers have different skills, and they also have little subsets of skills that complement the others. So that knowing at least the general area of what you want. The TEA website's a really great resource for finding companies that do close to what you want, and then just ask. I think you'll find that the vast majority of people in our industry are happy to talk about their work. We're a very passionate group. None of us are particularly hard to get to talking. Most of us are social butterflies, particularly if we are set in the right setting. Yeah, exactly. So give us a chance and we will talk your ear off about it probably.
Speaking of, what are some things now that COVID-19 is happening and a lot of these networking events have been kind of backed off? Well, I'll get to this question first. What can students who are still in school that aren't near any of the hotspots, how could they best reach out to the industry?
I think the answer to both of those is pretty much the same. Find virtual events and participate in organizations. TEA is doing a really good job about starting to diversify it so that we're not just sending events to Orlando and LA. We now have hubs in Chicago, DC, New York, Louisiana, Georgia. West Coast has got Vegas, LA, Seattle, North California. So we're starting to diversify. It's not great. So if you're in the middle of Colorado, apologies, there's not a lot of that stuff to do there. So TEA university clubs are a really great way to get involved. A lot of clubs have their TPEG or their theme park clubs. Find those, seek those out. And the other side of this is you're working in an industry that does have hot spots, so you're probably going to end up being in one of these spots at some point. Travel here, come see us when it's safe to do so, and reach out. Again, the TEA website allows you to connect with people, find a mentor. I posted a really heartwarming story yesterday on LinkedIn about someone who had found a mentor, and that turned his life from basically being destined to run a garbage truck his entire life to now he's got an acceptance to Harvard. And a mentor helped turn that life around. And I cannot tell you enough how much mentors have meant to me. Folks like Dave Cobb, folks like Steve and Glenn Burkett, Steve Alcorn, folks like that have meant the world to me. So,
well, I know that So You're About to Graduate College group is doing, we're trying to do virtual hangouts as well. So anybody listening, keep your eyes and ears on our page on Facebook, because we're going to have, virtual hangouts so that you can get to meet peers who are either working in the industry or have worked in the industry, and build those relationships, because this is a relationship-based industry. You can't burn bridges.
Steve Burkett is famous for saying there's only 5 people in the industry, so you can't afford to annoy any of them. It's really unfortunately true. I say unfortunately, it is a tough industry to break into at times, particularly when times are thin or lean, but it's also a really open industry with some really, really lovely people who want to help you succeed, and that matters a lot.
It's true. Tiffany Wang just asked a great question. How do UX researchers and designers or project managers fit into themed entertainment? She's studying emerging media studies.
User experience is one that we definitely need more of in this industry. If you've ever used some of the interactives that exist in parks and museums and things, you notice that not all of them have had the touch of a user experience designer involved in them. Some of them are wonderful. I'm not dissing all of them. I've worked on several of them, so I'm certainly not dissing those. But having someone who understands how humans interact with a thing is very valuable. Don Norman's book, The Design of Everyday Things, is one of those lovely reads. If you've never thought about how humans interact with things, take a look at that book. But we need more of that. Frankly, right now, the companies that are hiring for that are either the interactive companies or the large companies, because they're the ones who have teams dedicated to that. So Disney and Universal certainly have UX people on their teams, and then some of the interactive companies do as well.
I'm going to go out on a limb, Tiffany. Just because I went back to school to get my degree doesn't mean everybody has to go back for a degree in themed entertainment design. But what I've noticed from people who are highly successful in this industry, they're always taking some sort of class or doing some sort of research where they're really delving into either software or just reading everything they can get their hands on. They're voracious at educating themselves in one way or another.
Yeah,
so,
you don't have to pay for education to get an education.
Right.
There's a line in the movie with Robin Williams and Matt Damon.
Dead Poet Society? No, Good Will Hunting.
Good Will Hunting, yeah. He said you spend all that money on education you could have got for $1.50 at the library and late charges. Spend a lot of time in your library, spend a lot of time online. There's a ton of resources that you can go and get courses for $10 or $15 on things like PLC programming and things that you would spend a fortune on learning. You can go to Udemy and courses like that to learn without spending a ton of money. Also, just again, find a mentor who's willing to talk to you about those things. I talk to people about PLCs and show control all the time. My job is to help reach out and talk to people about show control. So, yeah.
It's awesome. XFL League, I don't know your real name, but you have some great questions. You mentioned open communication lines with you and others that believe in helping with information. What do you feel is the best way to reach out? Either do you want, would you prefer people DMing you through Instagram or LinkedIn, or do you prefer emails?
I love getting reached out to on LinkedIn. I accept pretty much every request I get on LinkedIn. If you find me on social, I am happy to join and connect with you there. My email address is on our website. It's joe@alcorn.com. I'm always happy to receive emails. Some people prefer staying on the professional side of things, LinkedIn and emails. I would say that unless you know someone, don't request them on Facebook until you get to know, or unless they openly invite you to, like I do. But start with LinkedIn, start with email, and then progress to the other socials. Twitter too. I mean, Twitter's so open; it's hard not to. Everything you post is public. So.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'll just add into that because I'm always. I think Facebook is a weird place unless you know people. So I would avoid like when I get a request from somebody I kind of know, don't really know. I'm like, okay, I hope you like my weird political ramble. Sure, okay. So like, I think it comes down to like whether it's LinkedIn or Instagram or Twitter. Those are all a little more public, and so I think a person that's willing to help people is not going to care on those public accounts. It's about what you're asking for. The only messages I ignore or I will answer on LinkedIn is somebody that's doing a hard sell for an obscure product line that I really can't relate to, and I'll be like, hey, thanks for letting you know. I'll keep that in mind. So, but Twitter, I love Twitter because the outreach on there is incredible to find people that are not in your industry, specifically with diversity and inclusion efforts. I've used that as a tool. LinkedIn, great. Reach out any day. I will not turn down a virtual meeting from somebody that wants to learn more or wants to get some help. That's just me. And you might get 100 no's and one yes, and all you need is that one yes. So I just wanted to comment on that.
Well, on the TEA website, again, the teaconnect.org, there's a connect option there. It sends an email. There's also an option for finding your mentor. That mentorship thing, the TEA is going to be pushing a lot more in the near future. So don't wait. Go and sign up to be that you're looking for a mentor now. There are people who've already said that they're willing to be a mentor like me on there, and we will get matched up so that we can help you. That's why we're there.
That's so awesome. I know a bunch of people have been asking like how to keep in contact with us on stuff. The Facebook feed, it's been added to the comment section. So if you guys have any questions about that, please don't hesitate to reach out to any of us on LinkedIn, because that's what we're here for. This is literally why we're doing what we do. Oh, thanks, XFL League. So Doug Bain threw a question to Emmanuel Bradshaw Design. Getting an internship while you're in school for credit or for pay oftentimes will lead to a paying job after you graduate. It's true. Right now, it's a really trepidatious time for everyone, for full-time employees, for interns, for freelancers. But the work is going to be there. So when Emmanuel Bradshaw, I'm assuming that's your name. Sorry if it's not. When they asked if I'm about to graduate in December, what's some advice to give to someone who's trying to land that first crucial internship?
Know that you might need to spend some time in another industry. Your internship may need to be with someone. It looks like your background is in game design and Unreal and some of the previs stuff. You may need to go work for EA. You may need to go work for someone like that for a little while and get that internship. At Alcorn McBride, we actually hired someone from EA very recently. So know that those industries are not that far apart, and that we do reach out into those industries to hire. So keep that in mind. And just because your internship isn't directly at Disney or Universal or SeaWorld or Alcorn or one of those, doesn't mean that you're not going to be in the themed entertainment industry ever. Sometimes it takes patience to get here. It took me 10 years, 15 years, depending on how you count it. So sometimes you just need to be patient with it and find your path. Paths are often not straight. They're the weird, narrow, winding paths, and sometimes that's all the fun.
And I'll add to that. If you are out there right now and you're about to graduate and you don't have an internship, you didn't get an internship, create your own internship. So what that means is get a group of your friends, 3 of your friends, and develop a project that you guys want to work on. Get an outline of what it is and reach out to industries, people in the industry, and say, hey, we have a month-long project. Can we check in with you for 30 minutes a week? You can review our work and give us feedback. That's very powerful, and I'm sure there are people out there that would help you. I'm doing that right now with some people. So I would highly recommend you just create your own stuff, guys, because you have to do that. You have to be tenacious in this environment. Yeah, go ahead, John.
So many of our companies have started that way. A lot of the companies in this industry were people who just said, there's a need, there's a hole, there's a niche that needs to be filled, and I've got something that's going to fill that. Alcor McBride started when Epcot did all their massive layoffs at the end of the building of Epcot in 1982. So did Burkett Engineering, for that matter. Both of those guys were let go by Disney, and they both said, well, hell, what do we do now? They said, okay, well, we're going to start our own companies. And they have been doing that for 35, 40 years now, successfully hiring people, employing people, building some of the best projects in the industry. And both of them are foundational companies in this industry that every company, every project in the world has touched in some way. So you can start really small and become really important really fast. So
cool. Well, there we go. We're about up on our hour long. I wanted to thank everybody for joining us. We had a lot of people watching, a lot of people commenting. If we missed a couple of your questions, very sorry. So, Joe, how can people get a hold of you if they want to get a hold of you?
Like I said, my email address is joe@alcorn.com. My personal email address is joe@webcruiser.org. Find me on Twitter, LinkedIn. You can find me on Facebook. All kinds of places. So again, if you find me on Facebook, you have to tolerate some of my political leanings, but everywhere else, just come and chat. I would love to help. I'm also on the TEA website as a mentor. So
cool. Andrea, how about you?
I'm also on LinkedIn. I'm as Luz Andrea Pavs-Ortiz, but find me as Andrea Pavs on Facebook or Instagram also, but like mostly on LinkedIn for the professional stuff.
Great. Well, thanks for joining us, everybody. Before we go, I do want to say, obviously, thank you to our guests. And all we ask, I know you guys really appreciate the content that we're doing. We know that. The one way you can thank us is by just sharing it to everybody you know that would benefit from it. So, the more people that are watching us, the better it is for us, just because we want to share this information. Kelly, Dave, and I are here because we want to be here. And folks, what I'll do is to XFL League, if that is your real name, I'll update the description in YouTube so you can at least see who we are. I'll link to our Twitter account, so at least that's a good way to follow us and find out more information. But please share our content with anybody who you think is going to benefit. You can like us on Facebook. You can follow us on Twitter. I'll do the thing. I'm Real Patrick K. Or no, I'm Patrick S. Kling on Twitter, which is fun. But thank you for joining us. We have a lot of interesting things that were in the works here for upcoming shows. Well, we're going to go back to a virtual hangout probably in about a month. We're going to do our next show is going to be all about museums. With Cynthia Brown. She's getting a team of people together to talk about that, which is going to be really exciting. And then we're also in the works, probably after summer or late August, we're going to do a design competition. So we're focusing on the details of that, but we'd love to have this platform. People come on the show, present their work. So stay tuned for all the magic. All right, guys. And thank you for Joe, and thanks for Andrea. Also great stuff.
It's
right.
Carlos.
Carlos.
Yeah. Oh, hey, Carlos. Thank you.
Carlos.
We're going to end the show. Joe and Andrea, please stay on the line, okay? But bye for now, everybody.
Bye.